What's good? It's your boy Trouble T Roy Hit. Don't get hit boxing talk, and I'm back with another one. And it goes. Get right into this. I had the opportunity, now it'll be yesterday, to watch about 2-hour interview on Andre Ward's podcast with Errol Spence. Errol Spence is, as you know, former unified welterweight champion of the world. He was an Olympian, really good fighter, and he's been on inactivity for the last 3 years and finally making a return against Tim Tszyu in a couple weeks, I believe. Not this weekend, but next weekend, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. I could be getting that mixed up with Boots and Zayas. I might be getting that mixed up, but I know he's about to fight soon, either in a couple weeks or a month or so. But anyways, and both of those are good fights that I will be looking to watch. Hopefully I won't be busy working or something. But anyways, so yeah, watch the interview, and excuse me, I kind of have a cough that I'm trying to hold in. I got allergies, something been going on the last month or so I'm trying to get through this real quick. Good interview with Andre Ward. Andre Ward does his thing all the time. He did his thing with Errol Spence. Very good interview, about 2 hours long. I did watch the whole thing yesterday. I did watch the whole thing. So for people who say, oh, you know, you only watching snippets and, you know, cutouts of the, no, I watched the whole thing from start to finish. I actually ended up falling asleep about an hour and some change into it, and then ended up waking up after a little nap and watching the rest of it. So, but it was a good interview. I'll keep it quick. There were some issues with the interview, and I know a lot of y'all who probably have seen the clips that's been released know what I'm about to get into. Errol Spence goes through a lot of interesting subjects about, you know, how he started his career, get into it, who helped him get in, you know, his experiences with people like Floyd Mayweather sparring, his dad, in a way his dad helped him get into, you know, into the game, into his career, pro career. Talked about his issues with, you know, with drinking. And, you know, he even said some things like, you know, he was using drinking to kind of help him, you know, open up in the public, which a lot of people do. That's a common thing. I understand it, you know, I do understand it. And, you know, he went through a lot of different personal things, which I thought was really good. It was very insightful to kind of know how he started, what he came from going through the car accident, what he had to go through with that. And, you know, his experiences going overseas to beat Kell Brook for his first world championship title, the IBF title, which I remember that was before that time. That's when I started hearing about him myself. And, you know, a lot of people started hearing about Errol Spence around the time the rumors came out about him sparring Mayweather and quote unquote giving him that work, as a lot of people used to like to say. But yeah, you know, he did his thing with that overseas. He went over to Kell Brook's backyard and he took that belt. I mean, I was very impressed with that, you know. And he goes through a lot of things that I'm not going to continue to go into right now, but I will go into the part that where I feel like the whole interview kind of went downhill. He gets into, and I think we all know, I think you all know, He gets into the Crawford fight, in that situation leading up into the Crawford fight, and the night of the Crawford fight, and, you know, post Crawford fight. And I'm not going to get into specifically the things that he was saying. You could go and watch it yourself, obviously. If you haven't seen the clips, they're all over Twitter. I know. I'm sure there's some on different social medias. I'm sure there's a lot of shorts on YouTube, so you could go watch that for yourself. But it was, I'll say this, I was pretty disappointed by the time he started getting into the Crawford stuff. The whole interview up until that point was really good, in my opinion. Errol Spence talks very well. And that's one of the things I've always been able to kind of appreciate with him. You know, he has a lot of good things to say. You know, he could do an interview pretty well. Very calm, like, you know, very insightful with him. You know, he opens up about himself very, very well in this interview particularly. And it was good to, you know, be able to sit there and collect some information, things that we may not have known, a little more detail into his life and everything like that. But this detail going into the Crawford fight, yeah, I think it was a lot of details he could have left out. The main detail is saying that his coach, who was Derrick James at the time, for, I believe, going all the way back to when he was in the Olympics, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. Somebody could correct me with that. But I'm pretty sure Derrick James goes all the way back to the Olympics with Errol Spence. Obviously, he helped him, you know, get into the pros and become successful in the pros, from gaining his first belt, the IBF from Kell Brook, to his second belt, Sean Porter, for the WBC, and his third belt, the WBA from Ugas, and leading him right into the Crawford fight. So he claims that this is the key points. I'll get into it, and y'all should skip to this part so we can just, if you want to just get right to it. He's talking about basically Derrick James didn't give him any sparring partners. He didn't spar for, he's at 7 weeks during training camp. No sparring for 6-7 weeks. To be specific, that's what he said. He says Derrick James wasn't giving him any southpaw sparring partners. He wasn't looking for, well, obviously he probably wasn't getting any, but specifically he brought up southpaw sparring partners, which obviously is, you know, something he specifically wanted for a switch hitter like Terrence Crawford. He brought up that he wasn't feeling too well before the fight. He said the training camp was bullshit. That was one specific thing he said. That was one of the first things he said before getting into the other detail. Yeah, he basically put the blame on Derrick James, which is my problem. Now, my problem with this whole situation, him putting the whole training camp situation on Derrick James, is Errol Spence. Okay, Derrick James is an employee of Errol Spence. So how are you blaming your employee for not doing their job, when you should have been telling your employee, Derrick James, to do his job? If the man ain't getting you sparring partners for 6 to 7 weeks, I mean, within the first week, you should have been like, when we gonna start sparring? I need to spar. This is one of the biggest fights of both of our careers. You never been in a fight. You never been a part of a fight this big. I've never been in a fight this big. This is, at that point, the biggest fight of our career, and you're telling me you can't get no sparring partners for quote unquote 6-7 weeks? That doesn't make sense. Because you're his boss. If he ain't doing his job, your job is to tell your employee what to do as a boss. That did not make sense. Not adding up. You know? So you're telling me for the biggest fight of your life, you was able to do it after getting into a really bad car accident. You guys were able to work it out. Us as fans and people who watch boxing didn't think you was ever going to fight after your car accident, but you had 2 more fights against Danny Garcia and Yordenis Ugas, and you were successful in those fights. So, and you looked like you was back to where you should be. A lot of your fans, a lot of people were saying that you was back after those 2 fights. Oh, Errol Spence, he's back. He's looking like the old Errol Spence. He's looking like young Errol Spence. He's back. Crawford ain't ready for this. You know, people thought you would beat Manny Pacquiao at one point when you were supposed to fight him, but had the situation with your eye. You know, the bone around your eye, whatever. So it doesn't make sense that all of a sudden you get to Crawford and suddenly you have probably what I would assume is probably the worst training camp of your career for the biggest fight of your life. The biggest fight of your career. It doesn't make sense. Then you go on to say it was a lot of contradicting going on too. Then you go on to talk about, and I'm not speaking in order of everything that he said, but there was a point where he said that, you know, basically he wasn't feeling the fight. You know, he didn't know. He said something like he went into the fight not really, you know, basically all the way there. He was tired in the locker room. He wasn't feeling the fight. He wasn't feeling good about some things. He had an injury apparently in the ribs, which we heard about, but still doesn't make sense to me. That's something I've heard some people who are supposedly in the gym with you say, yeah, he hurt his ribs. Okay. So, and then you go on to say that if that happened, if all this stuff happened, it's like, okay, but it still doesn't make sense. Because it's on you to make sure whatever you need is getting done. You're paying these people. Once you get paid, you pay your team, including Derrick James. They don't get paid unless you get paid, which makes them your employees. Because if you don't fight, they don't get paid. Which means whatever's not getting done, you need to be like, you know what? Hey, Derrick, you know, this ain't right. This ain't right. This ain't right. I was listening to this earlier today. He did a morning thing, and he said it the same way. He said, if you're a boss of somebody and you have, you know, if your employee ain't doing their job and you don't, are you going to pay them still? Or are you going to, you know what I'm saying? It's your job as a boss, as an employer, to make sure employees get the job done. Otherwise, they're wasting your time. They're not doing the job right. They're not doing the job at all. You ain't gonna pay them, are you? You know, which was I was like, that's true. You know, so it's like, you know, people try to use this. Oh well, you know, Earl ain't really like that. You know, Earl doesn't really talk like that. He's not very talkative. He's very to himself. It's like, this your money. This your money and it's your legacy. Which brings me to a whole other thing. From the point that he got to the fight getting ready to happen, it sounds like it wasn't about legacy no more. I understand. A lot of people are arguing, going back and forth about this, saying, you know what? He got the money though. He said, you know what? Win or lose, at least my family will be okay. Because this is life-changing money. So there's no way I'm not going to do this fight. He said, basically, he's going to sacrifice himself and his body and his health to get this money for his family. And it's like, that's cool. That's a good thing. If you meant that, if you mean that If that's what he really meant from those days leading into the fight, that he knew he probably wasn't going to win. He even said that he might not. He don't even know if he's going to fight again after that. I can't remember if he was saying this was before the fight. I think he was saying this was before the fight. He was thinking this because that's why he was talking about, I'm not going to turn this money down because this is going to be life-changing money. But even after a fight, you left for 3 years, so clearly you really did believe, you're being honest, you didn't believe you would fight again, you know? But yeah, you did this for your family. As a father myself, I could definitely appreciate that. But at the same time, it's like, I'm kind of looking at it like it just ain't really adding up once again. It's like, I feel like you never thought you was going to win. I feel like that's why you pushed it off for 5 years. I feel like that's why Errol Spence pushed the fight off for 5 years. I really do feel that. Because, okay, you say, you know, you did it because you felt like this was just what you needed to do to get the money, right? You didn't know if you was going to be able to win. But why is it that you had a bad camp, right? Okay, you got into that ring, you got beat up. Now, I feel like for a fighter, if a fighter believes in themselves, that they are still better than their opponent that just beat them, why wouldn't you have taken that rematch clause? And then what you do when you're asked about that, when Andre Ward said, so what happened with the rematch clause? He said, I should say, because he probably ain't gonna hear this, but he says that Al Haymon didn't want him to take the fight, basically. He said Al Haymon felt that he wasn't there, his mindset wasn't there. Maybe his body wasn't there. Like he was going through too much for him to need to take the rematch. But I'm thinking, if it's me, because he didn't say, he said, I never said that I didn't want the rematch or the rematch wasn't going to happen. He put it on Al Haymon. So now first, it's the coach who got you who helped you get beat. And now you're telling us that it's Al Haymon who made sure the rematch didn't happen. But if you were confident, in my opinion, I feel like if you was confident in your ability to beat him, you would have said, you know what? I'm going to have to get rid of my coach, find me a new coach, give me another few months to get ready for his rematch so I could get things done right. I do spar. I do whatever else I need to do in the gym to get ready, and we run it back. But you said, Al Haymon said no. But once again, this is where the contradiction comes in. Before he got into that about the fight, he talked about how him and Terrence Crawford got together and made the fight. He said they made the fight, basically. They were the ones to make the fight. He said that me and Terrence Crawford came to agreement. He said I changed the percentages and everything because I did not want the fight to be pushed back and people would think that I'm ducking. I mean, technically you duck for 5 years. I don't know. I don't think another few months or whatever you would look good anyway. So I probably been the same way. But he said I didn't want to push the fight back no more. I changed the percentages. According to him, he says he changed up the percentages to make sure that the fight happens. He said he sent it to his guys, and there you go. There you go. The fight was on. He didn't say nothing about Al Haymon about making the first fight. But, so this is where I'm confused. How is that all of a sudden Al Haymon is back in the picture with the rematch, and he's deciding that you shouldn't make the fight? And you know why I don't believe that Al Haymon had that kind of power over you to not make the fight is because look at what Fulton did with Inoue. Al Haymon apparently didn't want Fulton to go up there to Japan to fight Inoue, but guess what? Fulton, basically, he said, I'm doing the fight, whether you're not going to stop me from doing it. Which shows how much power that Al really has, which makes Al Haymon this mystical computer that I think he is. It makes you feel like he really doesn't have as much power and authority or whatever over these fighters. That's why I think he don't pay them like they claim he does. I don't know if he exists still to this day. That's a whole nother story. But it's funny, we keep going with this. Now, the same thing happened with Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder loses his first fight, biggest fight of his life. And guess what he does? Blames it on the coach. Blames it on the coach. And now look, what does Errol Spence do? First big fight of the biggest fight of his career. He blames it on the coach for losing. Blames it on the coach. I found that very ironic. It was for different reasons, but still, at the end of the day, it's what I always found funny about these PBC fighters. Whenever something ain't going the way that they feel that the public and the fans think things should go, they put it on Al Haymon. Well, Al Haymon said no. Al Haymon said we can't do it. Al Haymon said we're going to do it this way or it's not going to happen. There's always an excuse with Al Haymon. Now the excuses is going towards the coaches. There's always an excuse. I just didn't like the excuses that Errol Spence brought to the table for all this after the fight. It didn't make sense. A lot of it doesn't add up. I think he didn't want the fight. I think he was done before and after the fight. I don't think he ever really believed in himself. I think he knew he wasn't going to beat Crawford. That's why he waited. Everybody, well, he said he was going to, go and get the other belts first. It's like, yeah, he also told Terrence Crawford to get a belt. Then they would talk about making the fight too. And then as soon as he went and got the belt, all of a sudden, oh no, you on the other side of the street. I'm gonna go get the other belts first. You need to take a 80-20 split. You need to do for 5 years straight until Errol Spence had nobody else to fight. He had no choice but to fight Terrence Crawford after he beat everybody else. But, his hardcore fans are going to sit here and eat it all up. Oh, see, I told you Errol Spence. It don't matter. I told you Errol Spence wasn't, at his best. See, I told you. And you're going to take this? See, you're going to take him blaming his coach for not doing his job when Errol Spence is his coach's boss who pays his coach. And Errol Spence decided to let his coach do what he did, which was apparently not what he needed to do as his employee. It doesn't make sense. It's hard to believe this after 3 years too. And you come back all of a sudden, do all this, and now you got a fight coming up and all this after Terrence Crawford finally retires. Now you back. Now you got the whole story. Now you have, this is what was really going on. I was dealing with this, and coach wasn't doing that. And Al Haymon said no to the rematch, and then all of a sudden you got everything to say after 3 years. I would have been better off if you just literally stuck to the I can't make the weight again. I would have better off with that. If you just said I can't make the weight again, and he don't want to fight at 154, and so the fight just ain't happening. You could have just said that. I'd be like, okay, whatever. He can't make the weight. He was already a big dude. He started fighting at 154 pro. So maybe his body could have taken a toll there. But no, you wanted to put everything on the coach and not sparring. And an injury. And this, that, and the other. And, I just had to do it because it was for... yeah. I'm sorry. But anyways, I'm already past 20. I'm shoot. This is going to be interesting. What happens, and he's already talking. Like I said, he talked about this might be his last fight. Apparently, I didn't know. I don't remember hearing him say that necessarily in the interview, but a lot of people are posting quotes of him basically saying that. So, I mean, hey, I thought he was done already. I didn't think he was coming back after 3 years, but we'll see how he does against Tim Tszyu. Yeah, it is what it is. But anyways, that's going to be it for this one. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good shit. Until the next one, it's your boy, Trouble T. Roy. Don't get hit boxing talk. Y'all holler. Peace.